Welcome to Find Your Tribe podcast. We're broadcasting from beautiful Portland, Oregon. My name is Annie Lavender Weller. I'm a member of the Turtle Mountain Band, the Chippewa Indians, and co-founder of the Leadership Lab, which is a career, academic, and transitional coaching nonprofit. I'm also a serial entrepreneur, author, and International Coaching Federation, ACC certified business coach and consultant. Welcome to my podcast, Find Your Tribe. Hello and welcome to another episode of Find Your Tribe. This is part 2 of my interview with Robert Ball, the builder, father, and visionary. And also I'd like to take a second to thank all my amazing listeners and want to remind you that if you are not already a subscriber, to please remember to review and subscribe on iTunes or wherever you listen. Again, thank you very much, and I look forward to bringing you more amazing guests very soon. Have a beautiful, wonderful day. So really what next thing I want to talk about is how did you get into real estate? I mean, it sounds like you started pretty young.
I was.
How old were you when you started?
I think I was 19 or 20.
So how did you?
I can't remember exactly when it happened in what part of the school year. What happened was I grew up with a single mom. We didn't have money. She was essentially, they don't call them that anymore. They're administrative assistant, but back, they called her a secretary. And, she raised 2 boys by herself. My dad was disabled. He lived here in Portland and St. John, so I'd come up and see him on the weekends. And I grew up in the Oregon coast by Astoria in a very small town called Napa. It's spelled K-N-A-P-P-A, so I was a Napa logger. And I really, as a young gay kid, I was very lonely in the school. There was no internet at the time to talk about that. So I went to school. And I really made the decision I did not want to go back there because I wanted to have a life for myself and forge a life. And so I was trying to figure out what to do. And I read an article about a big family in New York City called the LaFrac family, Sam LaFrac. And I said, real estate, that might be something I could do. And it was time to sign up for classes. And I actually took a real estate class. I said, well, I'll take this. And it turns out that it was for people that wanted to be real estate agents. So I was a little disappointed. I thought I was going to learn about how to buy real estate or what, how to do things like that. But what the class did, it fundamentally did teach me some definitions and terms and contracts and things like title and all that. But the woman who taught the course, her name was Jean Tate, and she had Jean Tate Real Estate, which is now Windermere Jean Tate, and she was the largest realtor in the Eugene area, her company. A very dynamic woman. And Jean, I would go to her office and bug her like crazy to no end. And I started working I was the first full-time employee of a small computer software company that was real estate oriented. We were the first people that made it so you could call a multiple listing service with a computer and get information about properties, a CMA, all printed out by filling out a screen. No one had ever done that before. So we ended up growing that company nationally. And
what's a CMA?
A comparative market analysis. Okay. So if you want to know what a home is worth. So we did that, and so I was working every day at the software company and going to school. Real estate was all part of that, and I was interested in buying it and doing my thing. And so finally, one day, one of the agents said, "We got a house for you, Bob." I think it was $20,000, and I put 10% down, which was all the money I had in the world, a couple $1,000. I didn't sleep for a few weeks, and I rented it out to some students, and I lived in the dorms, actually, but I rented the house out to other students, and I had a little bit of cash flow. I think it was $100 a month, and then I decided, wow, I want to buy another one of these, so I saved my money again, because what I did is that $100 a month was my fun money when I was in the dorms for the year. So I thought, gee, if I do another one of these, I'll have double. Yep. That. And so that's how I started. How long did it take you to get the $100? I mean, another year or? Well, no, I mean, because I've been so, I always tell people to take $5,000 and double it 10 times. So if anybody listens to this, do that. And so if you think about it, the first 5 times, if you look at the relative dollar amount, what it ends up being, I'll keep that a mystery here for everybody, but they should really do it. If you look at the first 5, the dollar amount's relatively compared to what it is after the second 5 is a small amount. So really it comes down to time. When we're younger, our most valuable asset is time. Yep. And so, I was able to start, make money. If I could double that money and just keep doing that, every year or every couple of years, that makes a huge difference. So, by the time you get, to the place in the career where I am now, it ends up being much bigger, stuff that you're looking at. So that's really how I got started. And what happened in the process is my true love in life and my true talents, I believe, are that I'm artistic and that I love creating. And that may shock a lot of people if they think about real estate development. But if you do it like I do it, I love taking older buildings and making them beautiful again. I love thinking about and imagining a new building and building it and creating that. That to me is a beautiful thing. And I love reading about art, and I love looking at it, and I love seeing it. And all of those things really drive me. So as I was in the computer software business and we continued to grow the company, and I was going to school at the University of Oregon at the same time, what really drove me was creating. The first time I took that little house and I made it look beautiful, the sense of accomplishment that I got and how good it made me feel to have a perfect white fence and a perfect yard and a paint job that made it look really pretty and beautiful. It was real pride of ownership. That gave me a feeling that I'd never really had in my life. And so that drove me to do another one and another one and another one, because that's where I found my passion to be.
So when was your
creating?
When was your first time that you bought a building? I mean, that just seems like.
I was
homes, but not a building.
Yeah.
So
what happened
scary.
is I had leased with an option to buy a couple big houses by the University of Oregon. They each had 10 bedrooms in them. And the guy that I leased them from saw what I did with the houses, because I had an option to buy them. So I was in control if I wanted to buy them for a certain price. I didn't know how at the time, but I had this option. He saw what I did, and he's like, "Hey, wow, kid, I'd like you to meet my son, who's about a generation older than me, not quite." And his name was Tom, and we met. And they essentially said, "Look, we have all these, we have a few more houses and duplexes and a few smaller apartment buildings. It ended up being 14 different properties all around the U of O campus." And they said, they proposed that we buy those in partnership from them. So all of a sudden I owned, half of all of these little crummy places around the U of O. And my charge was, hey, tell us what payments you can make, save some cash flow, and fix them up like you did those houses. So that's what I did. That's how I got started. So I had a little 6-unit, 8-unit, 10-unit buildings, part of that. And I learned about that. I learned about renting places out and what that meant and how to do it and how to do it efficiently. So I just grew. And eventually I was able to take the equity that I made in that and put it into a single property, and then was able to exchange into my first building here in Portland, and which was right off of Northwest 23rd Avenue.
Okay.
And so I'd seen that. When I looked at that in the late 80s and early 90s, I said, this area is really going to be something. I thought what was happening on 23rd at the time, I said, I would love to buy one of these little brick buildings here. And I actually drove around with my dad. I drove him around and I made a list of buildings that I wanted to buy someday. I was like,
do you still have that list?
I do.
That's
And I
awesome.
and I bought some of them, which was great. And so I had this vision in my mind of taking these older buildings and be able to fix them up and make them beautiful again. And that's really what drove me to that neighborhood, and just the idea of being able to be a part of the creation of something nice like that. So I did that. And then one of the buildings on Johnson Street that was my first conversion, I bought it as apartment buildings. I was in my late 20s, actually.
You're a baby.
Yeah, I was. And it was at the corner of Northwest 21st and Johnson, the American. And
I know where that is.
Yeah, it's a big red brick building.
Yep.
And I think it was 39 units. And I fixed that up and sold them as condominiums. And I think
my friend Grant lived there. Once I think about it, sorry.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Oh, I know who you're talking about. Yes, he did.
Yes.
So I know it's amazing. I know so many people that have been through. Before I bought it, so many people lived there and had been to great parties there and everything.
Oh yeah, I've been to great parties there.
Yeah. So we, I did that, and that was my first sort of bigger one. And then actually, the guys from Eugene saw what I did. They said, we'd, like to do that with you. And so we ended up partnering, and we ended up buying more stuff and more stuff. Then we got into the bigger stuff, into the Pearl District.
Mm-hmm.
Need some water.
You mind drinking out of the same glasses?
That's fine. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, my throat got a little messed.
No.
Talking this much.
You feel better?
Yeah.
You want to hold? We could leave that right there.
Oh yeah. So, so I ended up, repartnering with the guys in Eugene that I had worked with, and they're a wonderful family. Gave me the opportunity of a lifetime because they had a lot more money than I did. And we bought our first big project in the Pearl District, the Marshall Wells building, which was daunting. It was on the freeway. It was far outside of what was in the core. Lovejoy was not a street then, right there. So we had.
Because I used to go to the City nightclub.
Oh yeah, so did I actually. I didn't know you did.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and we tore the viaduct down there, and put in Lovejoy, put the streetcar, and I have a great picture of me somewhere that a newspaper from Tennessee, the Tennessean, actually had a photo of me on the front of their paper because they were thinking we should do this in Tennessee, in Nashville, like they're doing in Portland. And it was me standing out in the suit in this big pile of mud, which was going to be Lovejoy Street, once it got put in and stuff. So we did that project, and then we bought the old Meyer and Frank warehouse. That was very successful.
That's one of my favorite buildings.
It's now the Avenue Lofts, and I loved that building. All the buildings I would put different things into that I loved. When in the Avenue, I went to Europe, and I'd seen these things, air vents. So when you go in the Avenue Lofts, there's these rounded air vents that I actually saw those in France. And I got the idea for the lighting when you walk in the lobby on the left side that actually goes all the way up through the courtyard into the tower at night. It's all tied together. And so I would often get inspiration from these different places. And when I did the Marshall Wells, I went down to a loft project in San Francisco that had an atrium to make sure that people would want to live in an atrium. And I ended up figuring out who the architect was, and I met with him, and he said, you have to do better sound on the windows, but people will do it. Here's how wide you need to make the atrium. So I did all that, and we ended up putting an atrium in the Avenue Lofts. But both of those were big projects. They were both on the National Register of Historic Places. So I had really gone from a place of doing these older buildings and the American was on the register as well. So all of my buildings up until the Wyatt were actually historic buildings. And then I ran out of them. And we had bought the block by the Bridgeport Brewery where the Wyatt's now at. And
the Wyatt's named after?
The Wyatt's named after a man named Wendell Wyatt, who was my grandparents' neighbor.
Okay.
And a very dear friend of mine. And I ended up actually, my partner Grant and I, when we had our two sons, they were twin boys. One we named Wyatt, and the other one's Parker.
Yeah, that's why I remember the name Wyatt. So I was like, did you name it after
I did.
Wyatt?
Yeah, I did. So each boy, would have, their name, really on a building. And we had always wanted to name, Wyatt was going to be a kid's name, one of our kids' names. And we also liked the name Parker. So when we had twins, it was really easy. It's going to be Parker and Wyatt. So it was great. It worked out pretty good.
Yeah, because the Parker is beautiful. So the building, it's beautiful. I mean, in fact, Michael and I talked about it, and we just weren't ready at the time to move.
Oh.
And so, we were looking, but I couldn't. Also, we're looking at building.
Yeah.
Because we're 10 years apart. I'm 42. He's 32. I would like to have one level. I don't want stairs.
Yeah.
I want things my way.
Right.
So I think that's why we're going to build. And we're probably going to go either the Helvetia way or Damascus way or Oregon City. We have a lot of friends that bought places in the 90s, fixed them up, and now sold them for 3-4 times because people are moving and they want to live in the city. And, Jim and Paul just bought a farm out in Oregon City, a huge farm.
Great.
And they have some real estate too, but he owns Orlando Construction.
Oh, got it.
I don't know if you've heard of them. But he's a general contractor, and now they have their farm with, I think they have 10 or 20 acres. And
wow.
we went out there and we buy eggs for them, and we get a lot of inspiration from them because they have a full garden where they're thinking about doing farmers markets and stuff. And I'm just like,
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, you don't see a lot of that in the downtown urban buildings.
No,
that's for
you
sure.
don't. It would be awesome.
But it's aspirational for sure. Yeah.
Well, they do have bees on the roof of one of the restaurants.
That's cool. Yeah.
I think the Imperial, they have bees up there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's great.
So you never know.
Yeah, absolutely.
You never know. Absolutely. So you went to these big, and then now what are you doing?
Well, I ended up, fortunately, I got approached to sell the Wyatt right before the market crash in 2008. So I was really fortunate. We sold it for, at the time, and it maybe still is actually a record price per unit. So it was, financially, I was in the best shape of my life. And I'm not a stock market person, so when everything crashed, I just took time off and I just watched. And then when I felt like that we were going to be short on rental units because I was watching these buildings fill up with rental units, and so I ended up buying the block where the Parker's at. Mm-hmm. And my partners weren't able to do it at the time, so I started it myself, and then for the first time I used a larger investment partner, which you have to get to a certain size before they do that, when you can get the UBSs and JP Morgans of the world to partner with you. And I was very lucky to have gotten to a level and had a success rate that they liked. And so I was able to get an institutional partner on that project. And it was a great project. And we actually ended up, when we got done, I sold my company that had the interest in the project. So the firm that bought my company actually ended up with the building, and it was really great for me. It was, financially, it was another thing that made me be in a good position. And so there's so many units going on the market. I was a little worried about that, so I've been sitting back a little bit, but I'm building a smaller, for me, 27 units over 4,500 square feet of retail at Northwest 21st and Kearney.
Okay.
And it's going to be a beautiful building. I'm so excited about it because I really wanted to make it like a jewel. So when you walk in, the lobby is going to be all slab Carrara marble with this beautiful, amazing 24-karat white gold and cut tile into their peach tree, like pink peach trees and greens mural. It's Bezzazza tile from Italy, and it is just going to be spectacular when you walk in. And the units are going to be a lot more spacious than we've seen coming on the market. The one bedrooms are going to be over 700 square feet.
Oh, nice.
2 bedrooms, 1,100. Yeah. So it's going to really be a much nicer place. And so that's where I've been focusing my efforts. And I've got a couple other things up my sleeve that I'm not telling anybody yet that'll be exciting if they come to fruition. So I'm actually been really busy.
So what do you think of the new construction that's been going on? I have some opinions. Because I live, northeast area. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. In fact, they tore down one house and they built a 56-unit complex with 8 parking spots.
Wow. Yeah. I've always been an advocate of parking. I wouldn't say I would never build a building without parking, because you never say it, but I've really tried to do that. My current building is 27 units, and I have 31 parking spaces inside of it.
Nice.
And I just said, even though it costs more money to do it, that's, to me, a better asset to have. And as far as the building is concerned, what's going on, as a native Oregonian and someone who's seen some ups and downs in Portland and Oregon, it's hard for me to, and I've been trying to get my arms around, is this really different this time? And I've really been pondering that question, and it's starting to really feel different because we're starting to see big investment companies come here that never came here before. I think we really are starting to see more diverse job growth that we haven't seen here before. And so I think the city really is starting to change in a different way than it has because, frankly, with all of the apartment units coming on the market, I was nervous about trying to build another big one because I didn't want to lose my shirt on it. And now it looks like it's continuing, and we're still seeing people move here, and we're still seeing job growth. So
I remember South Waterfront because I lived in Johns Landing.
Yeah.
So I was married before, and we lived in Johns Landing, and in fact, I was on the board, the South Waterfront Board.
Interesting.
Neighborhood board, yes.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't very happy about OHSU going down there and not paying taxes.
Right.
And building all these big buildings and then all these big condos, and they're blocking the view, and we have all these beautiful Victorians.
Right.
And
the one thing I can say
but I'm glad it was done at the same time because it lifted up our professionalism.
Well, I think the other thing is this, that, there's a big issue right now. Obviously, everybody's talking about affordable housing. And I think that although well-intentioned, and this is somebody, I'm a proud Democratic liberal voter. But I'm also I'm a crazy liberal. But I'm also a real estate investor and developer, so I understand that world. And I really believe that the council has been well-intentioned but misguided in that that if we put in the rent control that's been talked about or the inclusionary zoning thing that got passed, what happened with the inclusionary zoning, most of the bigger companies, other than there's a long-term family that just announced a bigger project, that may actually have been in front of the February 1st deadline, but the permitting for new apartments has stopped. And it stopped because the incentives weren't enough to get them financed at a normal financing rate. And a lot of people don't understand that. They just think, you can afford it because you're making profit in the project. Well, the problem is that, yeah, maybe, but if one little hiccup in the market and you can lose it all just that quickly, and the banks want to see, before they'll finance you to be able to build it, they want to see a certain level of cushion in there that's taken away. So I think that some of the things and ideas that have happened and been tossed around are actually going to put us in the opposite direction. I think it's going to make housing more expensive. And I think the single greatest thing we can do to ease the burden and to stop the upward pressure is a very old-fashioned, simple concept, which is supply and demand, and have more product on the market. So we really need to figure out where we're going to build it. Frankly, make it easier to build it and get more supply out in the market, because you saw it in the Pearl District when all of that stuff went up around the Parker after I sold the company. They were giving several month rent concessions because they couldn't get people in at the prices. So when you have supply, things they soften. And so the more supply we get, it's going to make it easier for people to stay affordable. But if we try to put in some limited measures in different places that actually stop that supply from coming on, then we're going to actually end up having the reverse effect. We'll have less units, there's less supply, greater demand, and prices are going to go up. And
I like some of the buildings, like the goat building. Yeah. I love that. South Waterfront, it makes sense because it's like an extension of downtown. Yeah, the Pearl,
unused industrial land really that we took, and
I'm sad about what's happening on this side of the river in the southeast and northeast side, because I see this big Darth Vader building. And then next to it is a clown college, I think.
Well, I've always... I know what you're talking about, yes.
I call it the clown college. Yeah. I was hoping it wasn't one of your buildings.
No. I know what you're talking about.
I'm like, okay, there's the Death Star next to the clown college.
I think I'm more worried about, because those are in areas that, we didn't have existing buildings. I think that the best thing that we could do is figure out in all the neighborhoods, what streets do we want the density on?
That's one of them I don't want. I hate to say that. I mean, I commute.
Oh, right there. Yes. No, but what I mean is, so wherever it is in the city, we need to figure out where do we want the density. If we're going to share that equally throughout the city, how can we do that in very specific areas? Boost the density up, boost the heights up in those areas, and then let it not be tall and dense around there to keep the neighborhoods. So really have a mixture. And I think that and then taking all the other available land and making it so we have more capacity. And in the areas where it is sort of old industrial land or buildings that aren't historic or whatever, making sure we can build as much as we can in those voids so we don't hurt the character of our neighborhoods.
Well, I feel like it did. I mean, the Darth Vader building, because next to it has a beautiful telegraph, I believe, or telephone company building. And the people behind, I don't think they're related, the black building with the white building.
Yeah, they're not. Yeah.
The white building meshes completely with the neighborhood. Yeah. It looks like it's part of the telephone company's building. It's white. It's beautiful. Yeah. It has windows.
Yeah.
And then I'm really scared because I know, like, the old furniture store across on the other side of Burnside, I'm hoping, like, they're not going to tear that down.
I think it was for sale, or their family's trying to that owns it.
It would be great if they
repurposed
it. Because
I love that kind of stuff. I actually think there's a value.
That area is just like my father's place, and there used to be, like, in that industrial area, there's such beautiful buildings.
I mean, I've always been a fan of that. I mean, as I said before the Wyatt, my business card said historic developer, so I love taking older buildings and redoing them. That's what I do with the Marshall Wells and the Avenue Lofts, which used to be the Myron Frank warehouse, and I essentially repurposed them from these warehouses that were down and decrepit into housing. Mm-hmm. And it was beautiful. And there's a beauty to that when you sort of mix the residential with the sort of cold-hearted industrial. You get this amazing kind of feeling if you do it right. And so I actually really believe that to preserve those resources like that's really important, and that as we're going through, then if we're going to do that, then the areas where we don't have the historic stuff or where we have available land, we've got to really make it. That's where we got to build. Like the Conway blocks is actually a good example. There's nothing out there except parking lots. Now that's the northern end of Northwest 23rd before you get to the freeway. They're really building that up out there, and they have the new seasons out there, and the buildings are going up, and that was just unused parking lots essentially. And I really love the idea that we're building neighborhoods there.
Yes.
And that's what we need to do. And frankly, in some of those places, I think we need to even go a little taller, let them build as much so we don't affect the more historic ones in the other parts of the city. So
yeah, it makes me sad because sometimes I don't recognize my own city. Like I lived in Denver for a few years, and I came back and I was like, where's my landmarks?
Right? You're like, wow.
It's like, what happened to that bar I used to go to? It's not there anymore. It's just odd. But I'm glad to know that there is somebody out there that has some sort of influence that is really taking care of our city. Our city has a big heart. And we definitely wear it on our sleeve when you come into the city as a tourist or somebody that just moves here.
I think we're going to have to work to keep that. Definitely. That's what my fear is. When we've had shortages in the police bureau, I know, and so they're talking about getting rid of things like different runs and things that where so many people come and stay at the hotels and eat at the restaurants that are really important to our economy. We have to keep those traditions alive, I think, that where we're doing those things. And I hate to see a lot of old Portland go away because it's sort of who our heart and soul is. And so that's really that's been a bother to me. It's been, personally, I've been trying to figure out ways to not let that happen. That's why I fought so hard for going back to the Mounted Patrol, because it was historically so important to our city. Yeah. And I think the more we lose those things, it saddens me. So I think
Do you think it's going to come back?
I don't know. It's come back in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh.
What do we need to do to bring it, to have it come back?
One of the members of the Friends of Mounted Border Patrol, she's trying to organize a rally that coming up, and hopefully she's successful, because
you just have to get all of us crazy liberal women.
We had so many,
and we can have horse hats instead of the pussy hats.
We've had so many people have wanted it, and it's just the decisions befuddled me. But I'm not in the position of the council mayor right now. I'm balancing their budgets and stuff. But I really believe that we could have saved it, and with the new community policing officer positions they wanted to form with it, they're essentially non-sworn ones, that we could have done both of those programs. And I think that there still would be a way to do that. So I'm hoping that at some point we can bring it back, because it's amazing to our city.
So one of the things that you mentioned, you're a dad.
Yeah.
To the amazing, adorable little Parker.
Yes.
He is so cute.
Yeah.
I love the fact that you overpost on Facebook. I love it.
Well, you know what?
I love it.
I hate to hear that. You know what happens to me
I'm not saying it was negative.
No, I actually had, for a long time when, as you know, Parker had a brother that we lost. And when the boys were first born, we always still say the boys, and we don't hide from that. When the boys were born, I would, and still to this day, there is a large contingent of Parker followers. And so if I don't post something, I get private messages saying, hey, what's going on with Parker?
Yeah, I haven't seen a lot of Parker lately. Right, and I'm like, are they on vacation or something?
Right, yeah, people it's so funny. They love to see, and I love that. It's great, and it's fun. Parker's a wonderful boy, and it's so much joy to be able to share him with whoever wants to be a part of his life. So that's exciting.
Makes me feel good because we were trying at that time and it didn't work out. And I feel kind of like, Michael's, we have a new baby. Michael's brother had a baby and she's 1.5 years now. And it's just like I live vicariously, I guess, through other people's children. So he really makes me smile a lot. And I love the fact that he's golfing in his little outfits. And
yeah, it's funny because I have one friend in particular. She has bought most of his clothes. Grant and I,
really?
We don't even ever have an opportunity to buy his clothes because he gets so many gifts from different people. It's kind of crazy, but he's the light of my life. He's completely changed my life. I'm so glad I was an older dad when I had him. I was 47, and I was worried about that, so I went and got all checked out by the doctor before I did that. And I'm learning that I think I was too immature and too self-centered when I was younger, maybe like a lot of us are, to have. And I'm so glad that I waited because, I was so busy with my career and stuff. But now I'm in a place where I can spend more time with him. And we get up in the morning and he's with his papa. That's me. And he calls Grant Dada, but he's with me, and I take him with me. I take him to morning coffee with me, and we sit there and we eat a little breakfast together out just about every morning. And that time that I spend with him, and he is a little golfer. He used to watch Golf Channel with us, and I didn't realize what he was absorbing. He used to clap even before he could talk when they would make putts, and then he started going around the house. And I didn't realize what he was doing at first. He took a coat hanger and he was swinging it around. I realized he was trying to swing it like a golf club. So I ended up getting him a tiny little set, and he hits them every day. He hits little golf balls, and we put in a little putting green in our backyard. So he goes out there and he putts, and he and I. When I get off work today, he and I are going to go and we're going to hang out in back, and we're going to hit wiffle balls and putt, and that's the best thing in the world to spend that kind of time with your son. And so we feel very blessed to have him. And, obviously we lost his brother, and that was a very life-changing event as well, because it really, we still feel like a family of 4, but one of us, is gone. But we really, for me, it's really put a perspective of life that although the pain is so immense and so great, losing a child like that, to some degree, the way you get through it is you have to almost to thank whatever higher power there is that you're able to experience that kind of grief and feeling, and actually try to really feel that and be able to move on from that. I always tell people it's like that first love when you broke up with them. You couldn't get out of bed for a couple of weeks and cried and stuff. Losing a child like that is that same kind of thing, but times 10, but then it never goes away. And so your body just kind of takes over. And but we laugh, we have great days, but why? It's always there with us, which is also fantastic. And so that has been a huge and major impact in how I think I feel about Parker, or the time that I spend with him as well, because you realize that just any time something can happen. And when you experience it, you value those things more than anything else in the world. You value your human connections and the time that you have with people, because nothing else really matters. Nothing matters than the people that are closest to you, and the experiences and the fun and the things that you're doing right there, in the present moment, because the next day it could be gone. And you really learn that in a hard way, actually, but it's made life with Parker even better.
So why did you decide to become a dad? I mean, did you always want to be?
Yeah, I always wanted to be a dad. I wanted to have a family, and I, now that I've had Parker, I feel like I was made to be a dad. I didn't realize. I also feel like every politician should be a dad or a mom before they're a politician, because there's to know that and to understand that is a whole different thing, and to feel that kind of love that you have for the child is amazing, and it drives a lot of your decision making. Everything you do in life is sort of centered around them instead of yourself now. So, I always wanted it, and I waited till Grant's younger than I am, my partner, and so I really waited till he was ready. We'd always talked about it.
How long have you and Grant been together?
12 and a half years.
12 and a half years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we waited, and he finally said he was ready, and so we did it. And we had a carrier, and we went through the process. We had our egg donor was actually over on the East Coast, and then we inseminated the eggs. Both of us did, and then our carrier was local, so it took a whole village to make our family, for sure.
It does.
Yeah, it's quite a process.
Exactly.
But
I know another couple that's done that too, and you can distinctly tell the twins, like one belongs to one and one belongs to the other, and even the way they act, like one. Oh,
that's
like,
funny.
I can completely tell.
we
probably know the same people.
Yeah, we have always been like, we just never talk about it. It never mattered to us. So what's interesting is people have asked us, and we're like, we don't know, and we don't care, and we don't want to talk about it. We just told the people to just do it randomly and go from there.
See what happens.
See what happens.
Are you going to do it again?
Girl, I wanted to sooner. And I think understandably,
I'm crossing my fingers, everybody. I want another little Parker.
Yeah, I'd love for him to have a baby sister. I'd love to have a baby daughter.
Well, nowadays, because when we did IVF and we were going to do the other one, I can't remember off the top of my head right now. Yeah. We could choose the sex of our child. We could choose. I mean, they were talking like we could even choose hair color and stuff. And I was like,
that's too much for me.
I don't want a baby monster, because they wanted to check to make sure that the baby didn't have any genetic because of my age.
Yeah, we did that. What we did is they tested us for 475 genetic things, and with the carrier to make sure they'd have no recessive genes. But what we did is we ended up with 13 embryos.
Wow.
13 grade A embryos. But we didn't want to know whose they were, what they were. And then we just said the first time we implanted 2, and our carrier had a miscarriage. And then the second time both took. But for the pregnancy was very healthy, going very well, but our carrier's water broke, which is an unexplained medical mystery. It happens. And so we just got that luck of the draw. And so the boys were born barely at 26 weeks. The water broke at 25 weeks and 5 days. So they were very premature. Parker was 1 pound, 10 ounces was his low weight right after he was born. And Wyatt was, I think, 2 pounds. So they were little guys. And we spent a lot of time in the hospital. Parker was in there 80 days, and every day I went in and held those boys. You do kangaroo care. You put them on your chest so their heart beats better and stuff if you hold them. And we would wear these little dolls inside of our shirts at nighttime, and then it would absorb our smells, and we'd put that in the incubators for the boys. And so we really got it. I was afraid of bringing home 2 twin boys, and God, am I going to be able to feed them right and do all this stuff? And by the time we left that hospital, I felt like I'd had a PhD in, parenting like that. So it was like, you really learn that as long as their vital signs are good and they're breathing and they're not too hot or not too cold, but their vitals are all good, that they're pretty indestructible. So just don't worry about it. Feed them. It's going to be fine. And we really learned that the hard way.
I think I'd be worried about other people. I'm worried more about other people's children than my own children. I don't know if that's something. Yeah. I've never had that feeling, but I was just like, I'm always like so careful when I hold a newborn baby. I'm just like, God.
There was a baby I saw a couple weekends ago, a little baby girl, and her parents had brought her out, and we were seated at their table, and you could tell that mom needed a break, and I'm like, here, let me take your baby. I said, I have this, and I just felt so natural with that little baby. I'm just sort of I love babies now, and I didn't realize, I always kind of want, like you said, going back to being a dad, but I just feel being a dad, and I felt like I could hold that little baby and just in every way and feel it right away and know what to how it was reacting. So
how many more are you going to have?
I don't know. We're actually, so finally we got around after losing Wyatt. It was really, really hard. I was more ready to, and I would actually like to have another one, and it's actually been part of the conversation. So we'll see.
So my grandmother said after you have 2, the third one is super easy. So you could have 3.
Yeah. Well, there are 9 embryos left. We have. So,
you could have 9.
Yeah, we've actually. They're frozen, waiting. So we'll see what happens. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Oh my god. Oh, you know what? We are way over time. Way over time. Okay, maybe I'll have you come back again, and we can talk even more about clown buildings and Parker, and hopefully next time I see you, baby.
We'll see. Yeah.
And I want more pictures. I feel like you've been kind of MIA on the pictures on the Facebook.
Yeah, I mean, usually it's I do it because somebody asks me.
So I like to end all of the podcasts by asking if you could give one piece of advice to somebody that is out there and they're kind of maybe struggling or something along that line, and what could you tell them about finding their tribe?
I think the most important thing is to be you, would be my best piece of advice. Be true to yourself, and don't think, just be true to yourself. Be true to the passions that you have in your life, and everything else will follow.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Find Your Tribe podcast is a conversation with guests addressing all aspects of what makes our businesses and personal lives unique. We will balance traditions with new methods, respecting the past while acknowledging the need to embrace new methods and technologies. Finding Your Tribe podcast uncovers the personalities behind the businesses, the leaders who paved the way, and the essential heart of what makes our tribes run. Please visit me at annieweller.com for more information.